Good tidings, everyone. This is Michael Govier from the Hey, it's Enrico Palazzo Fantasy Baseball Podcast, and you're listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our featured presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 184, Movie Winning Streaks. With Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Derek, how are you, my friend?
Good, Chris. How you doing tonight?
Oh, good. What's new and exciting in the world of pop culture for you, my friend?
Well, I've been pretty busy with my work. I'm coming up to summer vacation, so as is always the case, when you're going to go on vacation, you got to put in a little extra hours to make things run smoothly while you're away. And so I haven't had a lot of time to do pop culture stuff because I've been busy with work. But I did have an opportunity to revisit one of my and one of your all-time favorite movies ever.
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, you watched Raiders of the Lost Ark last week?
Yeah. So one of the podcasts that I enjoy that I've mentioned a few times on this podcast is called The Rewatchables. It's on The Ringer with Bill Simmons. Mm-hmm. And they did an episode this week about the 40th anniversary of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And believe me, you want to feel old? Raiders is 40. So I heard them. I listened to their episode. I loved it. They did a great deep dive of the movie. And I was like, I got to go back and watch this movie again. So I sat down and I enjoyed it again for... Geez, if the over and under was 50, it's got to be over. Yeah. And this movie, there are some movies that people would say are perfect. This to me is probably on that list. It is a perfect movie, or it is very close to being a perfect movie. There's not
a single flawed scene, line, moment in that movie. It's perfect.
I mean, there are some little bits that you could nitpick, but I would hold just about any other movie up to Raiders, and I'm sorry, Raiders of the Lost Ark is going to be the champion every time in that head-to-head battle. So yeah, it was a fun, enjoyable revisit of a movie I love, a movie that I've seen many times. It was like wrapping yourself in a warm blanket and just feeling comfortable and safe. It's such a good movie.
I'm so glad you mentioned Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it just go figure, because we don't know what each other's going to talk about when we come into the show. And it's funny because just this week I was thinking about Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I was thinking, have we done Raiders of the Lost Ark on this podcast? And I thought, I don't think we have. And I went back through the archives and I found out that we did. Like, it was before you joined us. It was when Yancey was on the show. One of our early shows, I had him watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I was like, I don't remember doing that show. I don't remember recording it. I don't remember talking about it. What the heck did I say? So I went back and I listened to it just this past week. And so I just listened to it just briefly, just a little bit at the beginning, because I couldn't remember what Yancey's take on it was. And Yancey didn't like it.
What?
Yep. And I listened to just maybe the first 10 minutes of the show, and then I just turned it off because I was just angry at that millennial. And he was like, no, I don't like it. It's not that good. Indiana Jones has no impact on the plot in any way, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just not that good. I don't know why you like it so much, Chris. I'm like, oh, geez, I tell you. So wow, go figure. He's just totally wrong. So anyway, just funny that you mentioned Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I was just kind of went through that this week. So.
Well, I do remember one of your very first shows, like probably in the first 10 episodes, one of your earliest top 5 lists was top 5 best opening sequences in a movie. Mm-hmm. And I remember you and I spoke about it when you would and you said like, yeah, there's our topic. And I said, oh, you've got to have Raiders of the Lost Ark in there. You said like, don't worry, that's in there. And I think it was either your number 1 or your number 2.
Number 1, baby. Yep.
Yeah. It's so good. And then just like you, I thought maybe we should do that as a movie review. And I'm like, nah, it's just gonna be 2 guys gushing about their favorite movie for 90 minutes. Who wants to hear that? Like, just go watch the movie.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Anyway, so in addition to that, I did have a chance to see a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries. Ken Burns must be your favorite director of all time because you watch a lot of documentaries.
I've never watched anything by Ken Burns, but I am aware of his work.
Man, what about have you not seen baseball? You're a baseball fan. You're a baseball fan, right? I mean, not like me. I mean, like I'm a diehard baseball fan. But Ken Burns did a documentary called Baseball, and it's in 9 different segments in the 9 innings, right from the inception, like when the game was invented through the Negro Leagues, and like all the way, and then it ends in 1992 when the Blue Jays won the first World Series that they won, and it's so good. Ken Burns documentaries are really, really good. That's his best one by far, I think. But
I'm familiar with his work. I've just never sat down to watch them, and I probably will at some point, but just not yet.
Oh, so what documentary did you watch then if it wasn't Ken Burns?
So as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, the A&E channel is doing a series of biographies about professional wrestlers who were big in like the 80s and 90s.
Yes. Yeah, you mentioned Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think.
Yeah, that was the first one I did with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
That was a little bit after my time. I'm more like an 80s Hulk Hogan kind of guy, but okay.
Yeah, and so there was 5 or 6 or 7 episodes, and there's still a couple more coming. I saw previews for a couple more coming up this week. And so I had a chance to watch a few of the ones that I had on my PVR. So I watched the one on The Ultimate Warrior, not a wrestler I was really at all familiar with. So that was totally brand new to me. And the other one was on the wrestler who went by the name Mankind. His real name is Mick Foley. And
that was a bit after my time too. He was weird and
Yeah. The Ultimate Warrior one was, it didn't surprise me. It was like, it talked about his life and how he was, a young kid and he got picked on and he was left out, and then he got into bodybuilding, and then he got into wrestling, and then he, had this huge ego, and then he got into like talk radio, and it's just like, as you're watching it, you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense that this was this guy's next step based on what you're seeing.
Right.
And he was the champion. He was the champion of the wrestler for one point. Like he beat Hulk Hogan and had the title. So like he was a big deal in his day. But again, I didn't really know much about him, so it was interesting. But the one on Mick Foley was really fascinating. Like this guy made his bones by being the punching bag. Like he
was a jobber,
made
a jabroni.
He made everybody else look good. Mm-hmm. And it turned out the guy is quite intelligent, and he was a really good storyteller, and he was really good at coming up with like the storylines for the wrestling. And he had a couple of different personas, and he was always willing to do a more dangerous thing in and out of the ring. And I'd sort of seen little bits and pieces of his life over the years. There have been a number of specials and biographies and such, but this was just fantastic. Like this guy's life is just incredible. And he's written, there's been a couple of books written about him, one of which he wrote himself. And then he's gone on to do like children's books and stuff now. And he was doing like crisis counseling for years after he got out of wrestling. It's like, this guy is just, he's got so much to offer, and just, anyway, it was fascinating, and they were both quite good. The Mick Foley one especially was quite good. So I think the last one I've got to watch is on Bret Hart, and I think that's the last one. But this series has been quite good. So if you've got the A&E channel, I would say check these wrestling biographies out. Even if you're not a big wrestling fan, they are really good, high quality, great entertainment.
Oh man, now you got me thinking, because you mentioned Mankind started off as a jobber. A guy that just get beat up, right? And, make the other guys look good. There was some really...
Cactus Jack was his persona when he first started.
Cactus Jack, that was who he started out as?
Yeah.
There was some really good jobbers back in the 80s. Now, you weren't a big wrestling guy, but let me tell you, anybody that liked wrestling, and is a Gen Xer like me, would probably remember some of these guys like Mario Mancini, and I remember Barrio. And then there was this one guy from Canada. He called himself Canada's greatest athlete, Iron Mike Sharp. And he would just yell when he was in the ring. And they would just like throw me like, "Arr!" and yell. These terrible jobbers. Oh man, that was good. Oh, you never liked wrestling all that much, though, did you?
No, it never really my thing. My brother was into it a fair amount, and a lot of his peer group was really into it. But no, my friends, we were more nerdy. We were into, games and comic books and things.
Ask your brother sometime about Mario Mancini, Barrio, and Iron Mike Sharp, and just see what he says. All right.
Fair enough.
All right.
Fair
Let
enough.
me know how that works. So, okay, here's what I got for you.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Derek, how can you tell how heavy a red hot chili pepper is?
I have no idea.
Give it away, give it away, give it away, give it away now.
I love how even on the weeks when there's no song, you find a way to sing.
Give it away. Away. Away.
Can I give you away? A little Canadian show called Schitt's Creek.
You can say Schitt's Creek, but you can't say
Wow, you are really dating yourself here, bud.
Schitt's Creek is awesome as
What are you talking about? Have you not seen Ryan Reynolds' film career?
Apparently my son has no soul. You're not recording this, are you? No, never.
Like, that's criminal.
I know. We basically have the same bone structure. From the waist up, I presume.
Most people won't question it.
It's all ball bearings now. All right, Derek, we were throwing around some ideas recently for a show topic that we could do, and you came up with the idea of winning streaks. And we decided to kind of narrow it down to movie winning streaks. So since it was your idea, do you want to maybe just explain this idea for us a little bit?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, please.
So, again, I listen to a lot of pop culture podcasts. I watch a lot of shows where they analyze the careers of various people in the film industry. And one of the things that often gets held up as almost like a trophy of how good somebody is you go back and you say, like, this person was in these 6 movies in a row that were all big hits, and this one along the way got nominated for an award, or this person got nominated for an Oscar or something of that nature. And it's not just that they've had a tremendous amount of success. What's almost as important is the fact that they have not had any missteps or duds or problems along the way. It's not, hey, they've made 12 movies and 9 of them were great. It was, they did 8 movies and all 8 were fantastic. No missteps along the way. And so as we were talking about it a little bit, what the proposal was, can we find, and obviously we did, but can we find a performer, a creator, somebody involved with the movie making process that has a phenomenal winning streak with no losses, no duds, no missteps? Now, that's not to say they've never had any of those, but that have a long enough winning streak, consecutive winning streak in their career. You go to their IMDb page, which is listed by year, you can find a string of hits. And I mean like bona fide hits, movies where it either opened number 1 at the box office, made a crazy amount of money, was nominated for a substantial award, be it a performing award, a best picture award, a best director award, a best screenplay, or something of that nature. Something that you can genuinely argue each movie on this particular winning streak was a hit in one way or another, and that people can't just poke a hole in it. And so that was the homework, was find 5 people that meet this criteria, and let's hold it up. Let's talk about it. Let's go through their list. And so that's our idea of the winning streak.
Okay. So we decided to do this in our regular format of a top 5 list. We'll let you kick things off. So who is your number 5 movie winning streak? Who did you go with?
So I want to do an honorable mention before we get into the list.
Yeah, I got a couple too. There's so many. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, this topic is a good topic when you start to think about it. Like, there's a lot to choose from. So the
research was fun. Yeah.
The research was a lot of fun. I had to look up certain movies on certain people's lists and go, what was that about? Oh my God, it made $200 million. Well, I guess it's a hit. Or other ones where you think they're a hit and then you look them up and they're not. So one of the people that I instantly wanted to put on this list, but unfortunately didn't quite make the cut, was Amy Adams. So I had you watch the movie Arrival with Amy Adams. I know you didn't really care for it, but I think it's fantastic. It's still, in my mind, it's still one of my favorite movies. Amy Adams has been nominated for an Academy Award 6 times in her career. She is a gifted performer. And I'm looking at her IMDb and I'm like, perfect. I found a stretch. Unfortunately, there's 8 or 9 movies here, and there's one dud in the middle. And if there wasn't, she would be the perfect example. So for her, from 2008 to 2012, I'm going to leave out the dud, but she has the movie Doubt, where she's nominated for an Oscar, Night at the Museum, that grosses $400 million, Julie and Julia, which grosses $130 million, and Meryl Streep gets nominated for an Oscar, The Fighter, which she gets nominated for an Oscar. The Muppet movie makes $165 million. A movie called On the Road, which was nominated for the Palme d'Or Best Movie at the Cannes Film Festival. And then in 2012, she does The Master, where she's again nominated for an Oscar. So this 5-year stretch is phenomenal. Unfortunately, right in the middle of there, she made a movie called Leap Year, which bombed. So unfortunately, her streak got interrupted by a misstep. Otherwise, she would be a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about. So I felt she deserved an honorable mention, even though she didn't quite qualify given sort of the rules we're working with.
Okay. So who do you go with for your number 5 then?
Okay, I was going to say, do you want to do your honorable mention?
I have a couple, but I don't want to. I don't know. Again, we don't share our lists, so I don't know who your lists are. So I don't know if I should mention them now or later. What do you think?
Okay. Well, why don't you do yours later? Because I figured with mine, I knew Amy Adams, being a more recent performer, was less likely to be on your list.
You think?
Yeah, I do. Okay. So my number 5. Let me tell you, for the most part on this. My first 2 are textbook answers all the way, and I just wanted to get them right out of the way. Otherwise, you would know who my top picks were. So my number 5, winning streak, Eddie Murphy.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, so I don't think we have to dwell on it too much. So from 1984 to 1992, I'm just going to read you the list.
See, I thought of him, but there was a dud in there, I thought. But go ahead.
Well, okay, and I'll tell you why I think we're still good. Beverly Hills Cop, The Golden Child, Eddie Murphy Raw, the stand-up comedy, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Coming to America, Harlem Nights, Another 48 Hours, and then Boomerang, maybe not, depending on who you're talking to. So of those 8 movies, the first 7 all opened at number 1 the week they came out. So even though The Golden Child may not have been the best movie and people may not have loved it, it was number 1 for 5 weeks. It made a ton of money. Harlem Nights, another one that had sort of a more selective audience. It opened at number 1. Eddie Murphy, as we talked about in the, I think when we did our Beverly Hills Cop episode in the 80s, he ruled. He could do no wrong. And this is the example. Like he is absolutely, when it comes to winning streaks, this mid 80s to early 90s, just his run is phenomenal. And although into the 90s, he starts to make, we'll say, some questionable choices. I think it's you do movies to get a paycheck, or you take on someone's project because you owe someone a favor or whatever. Again, I don't know if those are the reasons that he made some of these movies, but he had a few missteps in there, along with some fantastic movies. I mean, the Nutty Professor movies were in there, but this run in particular is just phenomenon. So my number 5 pick for the winning streak is Eddie Murphy.
I'm really surprised because, he deserves to be on your list. And I thought you were going to go with more earlier in his career. So you went a little bit later into the 80s. I thought you meant you were going to go right from the get-go. And right from the get-go, he was in 48 Hours and Beverly Hills Cop. But then he did Deal of the Century. And that was a dud. Otherwise, he would have had more of a streak, with things like Trading Places and stuff like that. But
and Best Defense was early as well. There was a few at the beginning where it was a little bit of a rocky start. But
Best Defense. When I say Deal of the Century, that's what I meant. Yeah, Best Defense was the one I was thinking of. Yeah. So that's a good one. Okay, my number 5. I'm going to go with Meryl Streep.
Oh, good pick.
Not only one of the most celebrated actresses of her generation, obviously, but she's probably one of the greatest actresses that ever lived. And if you look back for a stretch there in the late 70s into the early 80s, she could do no wrong. Not that she's ever made a real stinker of a movie anyway. I mean, I don't personally care for Mamma Mia, but you can't really call it a stinker. I mean,
it made a lot of money.
Yeah, people went to see it.
And a sequel.
Right? It got a sequel, right? So, but if you're talking about a streak of really strong movies and really, really good performances, I think Meryl Streep is the person I want to start with. So not only did she have a great winning streak, it was a winning streak right from the get-go, because her first major role in a movie was in 1978's The Deer Hunter, which won Best Picture and was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including one for her, for Best Supporting Actress. Now, she lost to Maggie Smith for California Suite. Oh, by the way, Derek, that year, Maureen Stapleton was also nominated for Interiors. She was the one from Johnny Dangerously. Remember I mentioned the other week, and you never heard of her?
Yes, never heard of her.
Anyway, Meryl Streep, so she follows up The Deer Hunter with The Seduction of Joe Tynan in 79, Manhattan with Woody Allen and also in 79, Kramer versus Kramer again in 79, which she won Best Supporting Actress for, and then The French Lieutenant's Woman in 1981, nominated for Best Actress. Katharine Hepburn won for On Golden Pond. Oh, so good. And then in 1982, Meryl Streep was in 2 movies, Still of the Night with Roy Scheider and Sophie's Choice, and she won the Best Actress Oscar for that one. And then she followed with Silkwood in 83, where she was nominated for Best Actress again. She lost to Shirley MacLaine for Terms of Endearment. Any way you slice it, that is one hell of a streak for any actor, especially at the beginning of a Hollywood film career. So my number 5 was an easy one. It was a slam dunk, and it was Meryl Streep.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of those early movies she was in, I'm just not familiar with. So I'm glad you. I figured you were going to sort of cover some performers in that 70s, 80s.
It's kind of my thing.
You know? Yeah. And I looked at Meryl Streep because, again, you know that she's going to have this gigantic winning streak, but especially in her early career, I'm not as familiar with a lot of those movies. So I thought, I think Chris is going to put her on his list, and sure enough, you did. So there we go. She got recognized. She got her due.
Oh, all right. Okay, your number 4. What do you got?
My number 4 is the ultimate textbook answer. In fact, it's kind of hard to not have them at number 1, but I think it's more fun to just get my 2 textbook answers right out of the way. So my number 4 textbook answer for best and longest streak is Tom Hanks.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah.
So this is a 20-year span from 1992 to 2002. Okay. I'm going to read you through 14 movies in a row without a stinker. Along the way, he gets nominated for a Best Actor in a Leading Role 4 times, wins it twice in back-to-back years. At this point, he can do no wrong. Okay, so let's start. 92, he does A League of Their Own, the baseball movie. 1993 does Sleepless in Seattle. 1993 also he does Philadelphia, wins the Oscar. 1994 he does Forrest Gump, wins the Oscar. Okay, so in back-to-back years he gets nominated twice, he wins twice. At this point he's writing his own ticket. He can do whatever he wants. He decides to do Apollo 13, which is a passion project. He does that great big superstar blockbuster hit. Then he goes on to do Toy Story, the voice of Woody in Toy Story, which, that's always a risk about, am I going to do how's his voice work going to go? But you could argue that changed his career in the most positive way. It opened up Tom Hanks to a younger audience who would grow up to love him as Woody. Then he goes on to do That Thing You Do, which he, if I remember correctly, wrote, directed, and produced, as well as starred in. He does Saving Private Ryan in 1998, where he gets another Oscar nom. Moves on to You Got Mail, going back to that rom-com thing. Does Toy Story 2, back to there. Green Mile, 1999. Castaway in 2000. He gets nominated again. Carries an entire movie where it's just him on the screen for the better part of an hour. There's not many people that could do that. 2002, he does The Road to Perdition and Catch Me If You Can. Catch Me If You Can, obviously a big hit. Road to Perdition, a little less so, but it does get a lot of critical acclaim. And in that 20-year span, that's 14 films. I've seen all of them. I think I saw all of them in the movie theater. I think most of those I own or owned on DVD or on video. Tom Hanks is a performer that when he's in a movie, you're going to go see it. And this streak is phenomenal. There are very few people that can do what he did in this stretch. And arguably he should be number 1, but he needed to be acknowledged. So I'm acknowledging him. I put him at number 4. I got a couple other people that I want to talk about in the lower positions, but that's my number 4 pick, Tom Hanks.
That's a good one. And again, you surprised me because you went with more of his later stuff. I was thinking, you mentioned Tom Hanks. I just go right back to the 80s. And I think, when he was in Bachelor Party, and movies like that and Splash. But he had some duds in there too, like The Burbs and things like that. But, that's a good one. No, definitely. Okay. Tell you what, my number 4, I'm going to get jiggy with my number 4 pick. I'm going with Will Smith.
Nice. Good pick.
Man, I tell you, for a time there in the 90s, he was the biggest box office star in the world. He had a run of movies from 93 to 99 that were all either very good or very popular or both. And it all started with his debut in 6 Degrees of Separation. In 93.
He's so good in that.
Oh man. He's known for being this big time action star, but this guy is also a really talented actor. And if all you know him for is the big blockbuster movies, I would say go back and watch 6 Degrees of Separation because he was really good.
Really good. He was really
God.
good. I remember there was discussion about him getting an Oscar nomination for that. He didn't, but I remember there was a lot of people saying he got snubbed. It was like, well, he's young, he hasn't put in his dues, and maybe he's a flash in the pan. And it's like, no, that was just a glint of what was coming.
Yes, I agree. So then he followed up that with Bad Boys with Martin Lawrence in 95. Independence Day was the biggest blockbuster of 96.
So much money.
Oh, God. And Men in Black was huge in 97. Enemy of the State came out in 98. And then Wild Wild West came out in 99. Now, you could argue that Wild Wild West was crappy, but it made a boatload of money. Oh, and it had a ridiculous great song. I love the song in it. So, man, when I used to DJ at the bar, I used to sing along to that song all the time when I played. Probably one of the reasons why I don't DJ at the bar anymore. But anyway, Will Smith is my number 4 for movie winning streaks. On to your number 3.
Yeah, that's a great pick. Yeah. I mean, in the mid 90s there, the July 4th weekend was Will Smith weekend. Like people, no other movie would open up except the Will Smith movie because he had such a proven track record after he did Independence Day, Men in Black, and I can't remember what the third one was, but there was 3 in a row. Where it's like, or maybe it was Bad Boys before that. It was like boom, boom, boom. And it's like, okay, we're putting out a Will Smith movie on July 4th weekend next year. Everyone else was like, okay, we're just going to step out of the way and give it to him. Like he was the man. I mean, he's still the man, but he was the man in the 90s. That is a great pick.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3.
All right.
What do you got?
My number 3.
Yes.
Sandra Bullock.
Oh, wow.
I find that often on our lists, the ladies don't get enough due. So I wanted to make sure that I had a strong female performer on this list. And as we mentioned at the top, I thought Amy Adams was my lock until I realized she had a little misstep in there. But Sandra Bullock has a phenomenal run from 2009 till now, with maybe a slight stumble, but we'll get to that. So obviously she's proven that she can be a movie star. She's proven that she can carry movies. She's in Speed with Keanu Reeves in the early 90s or mid 90s. And like, it's a huge movie. She starts doing a bunch of rom-coms and she does, she does like The Net and a couple other things that are not great, but they make okay money, but she's got a screen presence.
Congeniality, I think.
So it's like, she's sort of finding her footing, and every time she does a movie, they're making money. And, she's a good performer and she's easy on the eyes. And so people are going to see her. Then in 2009, she does The Blind Side. She gets nominated for and wins the Oscar for Best Leading Actress. Have you seen The Blind Side, Chris?
No.
Oh my God. Okay. We're going to watch that in the not too distant future.
When did she did Crash before that, right?
Yes. There was a couple other ones she did that were like,
Crash.
Yeah, she had a few where she was really good, but then unfortunately a couple missteps getting into there. Okay. So, but I'm going to start with The Blind Side. Okay. So 2009, she does The Blind Side based on the Michael Lewis book, and it's a phenomenal movie. She gives a great performance. She gets nominated for and wins an Oscar. Great. The next year, 2 years later, in 2011, she does a movie called Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. And I thought, oh, that must have been a misstep. Then I look it up. It was nominated for Best Picture. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna forgive that. That's not a misstep at all. Then 2013, she goes back to her comedy roots. She does The Heat with Melissa McCarthy. It's got a $40 million budget. It makes $230 million. So again, a huge comedy hit after doing these two heavy dramas. That same year, she puts out Gravity, gets nominated for an Oscar again, doesn't win. 2015, she does the same thing Tom Hanks did. She does voice work in the Minions movie. Then in 2015, a little bit of a hiccup, she does Our Brand is Crisis, which is a movie, which is a fictional retelling of a documentary. Documentary was very critically acclaimed. So again, it's sort of her flexing her muscles to do a political, satire type movie. Then she does Ocean's 8, obviously the all-female sort of retake on the Ocean's 11 trope. And then in 2018, same year, she does Bird Box, which is like the biggest movie on Netflix for months. So if we say Our Brand is Crisis is the hiccup, then she goes from 2009, 2015, 5 solid outings. If we give her that sort of, stumble on Our Brand is Crisis, then she gets 2 more movies out of that, 3 more movies out of that. She got this 8-movie run that lasts 11 years. She is at the top of her game. She's obviously one of the most talented and probably one of the highest paid actresses working today. She's very selective about what she does. Obviously, she's not pumping out movies every year, But when you've got this much power, you've demonstrated you have this much of a track record, when you have this much of a winning streak, you get to call the shots. She's clearly calling the shots. Sandra Bullock, my number 3 pick.
No, I like that. That's a good one. All right, my number 3. If you've learned anything about me over the years listening to this podcast, you know that I love comedies from the 70s and 80s. And when I think about those comedies from that time, I think of one person, and that's Bill Murray. So
nice.
Let's just run down his streak of comedy movies. We're going to start with my personal favorite and Bill Murray's first starring role, and that's Meatballs in 1979, which I just love. And then Caddyshack in 1980, Stripes in 1981, Tootsie in 82, and Ghostbusters in 84. Now, his streak of these amazing comedies ended in 84 when he decided to try his hand at some drama when he did it was like the second time that was adapted, W. Somerset Maugham's novel, The Razor's Edge. It wasn't very good. It was a bomb, and audiences just couldn't buy Bill Murray in a dramatic role. But regardless, from 79 until 1984, Bill Murray had this comedy streak that's basically unsurpassed in Hollywood history. In terms of comedies, at least from my point of view, I love those comedy films so much. So it really set the tone, I think, or it set the standard, for comedies of the 80s. And I think Bill Murray was a big part of that. And his streak was sort of drove, a lot of the comedies from the 80s. So I'm going with Bill Murray. So he was my number 3.
Nice. That's
what do you
a
got
good
for
pick.
number 2? Yeah, I like
All right.
Straight, so.
Again, my number 2, this is kind of a textbook answer. And I think people will often, if you ask someone, this is someone that they would probably put near the top of their list. He's got 2 amazing streaks. So I'm going to talk about both of them. This is movie director Steven Spielberg.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we talked about him a little bit already. We talked about Indiana Jones. We talked about Raiders of the Lost Ark, rather. So Spielberg, again, we've talked about him on a lot. Arguably one of the best, if not the best director of our generation. He has made some stinkers along the way, which unfortunately makes his winning streaks tend to be a little shorter because, you do a few amazing movies, you get a bomb. You have a few more amazing movies, you get a bomb. But he had a couple of very, very strong streaks in his career. And we're going to look at the first one here. Goes from 1981 to 1989. Then he's got, unfortunately, a couple of stinkers. Then he goes again from 1993 to 2002. And these are both you're not going to believe it. Well, I mean, you will, but these runs are phenomenal. So starting with 81, he does Raiders of the Lost Ark, 81. E.T. the Extraterrestrial in 82. 1983, he directs a segment of the Twilight Zone movie, which did pretty well. 1984, he does the sequel, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. 1985, he does A Color Purple, nominated for awards up and down. 1987, he does Empire of the Sun, also nominated for awards up and down. And then 1989, Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. So now, in all fairness, 3 of those movies are from the same franchise, but that's a pretty impressive run. And you got to think, between Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T., the revenues he's generating out of those are ridiculous. Then 89, he does Always, both The Ghost and the Plane. 1981, he does the Peter Pan Hook remake. Both kind of missteps along the way. Then 93, finds his footing, and man, oh man, does he find his footing. He does Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year. Again, possibly 2 of the absolute best movies of the 1990s, possibly 2 of the best movies of the last 30 years.
Yep.
1997, he does the sequel to Jurassic Park, The Lost World. The same year, he does Amistad, one of my personal favorites. 1998, he does Saving Private Ryan. 2001, AI, Artificial Intelligence. 2002, Minority Report with Tom Cruise and Colin Farrell. And 2002, same year, Catch Me If You Can with his friend Tom Hanks and with Leonardo DiCaprio. That is an impressive run on its own right. But the fact that this is now his second winning streak run over the course of, 20 years, 21 years, that is it's phenomenal. This guy knows what he is doing. He is obviously at the top of his game and has been for 20 years. That is a winning streak if you're ever going to have one. So Steven Spielberg arguably could be number 1.
Yeah.
I got him at number 2.
If it wasn't for 1941 too, you could have went right from Jaws and Close Encounters and Raiders of the Lost Ark and 1941 was so awful. It was so bad. All right, number 2. I'm going to go with Harrison Ford. Okay, one of the highest grossing actors of all time. And for a span of like 5 years in the early 80s, he was in some of the greatest films in the history of Hollywood, at least in my opinion. So we start with 1980. So there was obviously The Empire Strikes Back, and then he followed that up with Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981, Blade Runner in 82, Return of the Jedi in 83, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in 84, and finally Witness in 1985. It's just so good.
That is a strong outing. That is a very strong outing. Yeah, honestly, I was going to put him on my list, but I was confident you were going to have him on yours. Yeah, go ahead.
The thing is, like you mentioned, like it's such a strong run, but not only is it such a strong run, the thing that sets him apart, at least for me, not only did he star in such like iconic and important films, but they were all so different. Like a lesser actor would have been forever typecast as Han Solo. Yeah. Not him. He was equally believable as Indiana Jones, Rick Deckard, and John Book. And that is no easy task for any actor to do. So not only did he create some amazing characters, this was just an amazing streak of movies. So he clocks in.
And he was nominated for an Oscar for Witness, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He was.
His only Oscar
nomination ever. Yep.
Yeah. No, that's an impressive run.
God, that was good. Oh, some of the best, some of my favorite movies. Like, what an act. And like I say, just he's so different in all of them. But the thing is, he's still Harrison Ford in all of them, but he's different. Like if you watch Witness and you watch Star Wars back to back, you don't even really acknowledge that it's the same guy. Like, it's like, those are different characters. Like, that's incredible. Like he's good. Okay.
Hey, and I've watched Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark like in the same weekend, and it's exactly your point. You do not believe that's the same guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
certainly a little bit of his personality comes through, and that's part of what we love about him. But yeah,
but you don't watch Raiders and go, "Hey, that's Han Solo."
No, not at all.
Even you watch Witness. At no point in the movie Witness does it even creep into me that I think that's Han Solo or that's Indiana Jones. No, it's John Book. Yep. That's a pretty incredible thing to pull off. So Harrison Ford, number 2. Already your number 1. I'm dying to know who you got for number 1.
All right. My number 1 is, so this is the second time that this person has made the number 1 on my top 5 list. Any guesses? Nah, don't bother guessing. I'll just tell you. Number 1, director David Fincher.
Oh, of course.
So he was number 1 on my my directors, and he's number 1 for my winning streaks. And essentially, he has not had any duds on his resume when it comes to movie making. He's done some TV stuff where there's been maybe a few hiccups, but we're talking about the movies. So I'm going to read you. He's got, how many is this here? 9 movies from starting in 1992 until today. 2020. Now, in all fairness, in the last few years, he hasn't worked as frequently. And I think that's partly why his streak is as strong as it is he's very selective about the kind of movies he wants to work on. He's very selective about taking on projects. And it's, when you get a certain level of power and clout and authority and a reputation for being a hit maker and having this kind of a winning streak, you can demand the best of people. You can demand a particular performer work in your project, or people want to work with you. And I think that's really where we are with David Fincher over the last decade. Is his movies carry a certain amount of gravitas and prestige, and so people want to work with him. So starting in 1992, his first feature film is the 3rd movie in the Alien franchise. So this arguably is his only real misstep, but the movie made a ton of money. So you had Ridley Scott, who did the first Alien movie, and James Cameron, who did the second Alien movie. Whoever they're bringing in for number 3, it's got some pretty big shoes to follow. Unfortunately, he doesn't carry it as well as you might have hoped. So there's some people love it, some people hate it. I personally like Alien 3 a lot, and I've learned to enjoy it a lot more in the years since, as I've gone back to revisit it. So let's, for argument's sake, just take that one right off the list. So then we move to 1995. He's got 7 with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. Phenomenal movie. It becomes a video sensation. It basically, launches careers for both of these guys who have both been doing very well, but oh my God, fantastic. 1997, he does The Game with Michael Douglas. Again, it's one of these sort of whodunit mystery kind of movies, twist ending before twist endings are really becoming a thing. Great film. Panic Room in 2002, Zodiac in 2007, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button 2008, The Social Network in 2010, which arguably is the pinnacle of his career. Tons of accolades, nominations up and down, and a lot of people, when they did lists of the best movies of the 2010s, The Social Network was on almost everybody's list, and many people said it was the best and the most important movie of the 2010s. 2011, he does The Girl with Dragon Tattoo, the English adaptation of the book. 2014, he does Gone Girl. Again, a ton of critical acclaim. And then just this past year, he did the movie Mank, again, nominated for Oscars all over the place. Like, this is a phenomenal run of movies. These movies are great. So my number one pick, David Fincher, my favorite director, arguably one of the best directors working right now. He's my number one for winning streaks.
Nice. Well, it's funny because you've mentioned before, David, you like David Fincher, but it's a little bit of a surprise for your number one. So I think my number one might be a surprise too. So, Derek, you've often accused me of going with the textbook answers. So I've got one for you this week. Okay.
Okay.
The greatest streak of any actor of all time, as we mentioned, should include no duds, right? Right. No bad movies, no vanity projects. So the thing is, if I was to tell you that there was an actor that every single movie that he was ever in was so good that every single one of those movies was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. Because
that's impressive.
This person exists, and his name is John Cazale. Okay.
Nice.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with his work or not, or if you're familiar with him at all, but he started acting in movies by appearing in The Godfather in 1972, which was obviously nominated for Best Picture.
Yep.
And then he went on to appear in Coppola's next film, which was The Conversation, nominated for Best Picture in 1974. Same year, also acts in The Godfather Part 2, nominated for Best Picture. Then he was in Dog Day Afternoon, nominated for Best Picture in 1975. And then he wrapped up his Hollywood career with The Deer Hunter, nominated for Best Picture in 1978. So he's only appeared in 5 films in his career, and all 5 of them were nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture, with 3 of them, The Godfather, Godfather Part 2, and Deer Hunter, all taking home the gold for Best Picture. So I think if there was ever a winning streak in Hollywood, for me, it's John Cazale. His entire acting career is just a winning streak. That's all it is. So he's number one on my list.
That's fair. That's fair. And now, if I remember correctly, unfortunately, the reason he stopped working was that he died at a fairly young age, right? Yes. He got sick.
That's right.
Yeah, I seem to remember that. As soon as you started talking about it, I'm like, oh, that's the guy who plays Fredo. Yeah, in The Godfather. So yeah, once I realized that's who it was, I think I had heard that before. So I mean, it's unfortunate. It's tragic that he died at such a young age, and obviously he was starting a phenomenal film career. But yeah, you're right. You can't really knock that. 5.
How do you only do 5 movies and all 5 of them are nominated for Best Picture? Like, it's incredible. Like, you obviously, that's crazy. That's quite a streak. You mentioned earlier, before we go on to our fun segment, about honorable mentions. I didn't want to mention any because I didn't want to step on your toes. So really, we didn't do too much. I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of. I thought about adding directors in. Ultimately, I went with all actors. I was thinking of Spielberg. I was also thinking of Hitchcock and Kubrick. But the one that really stood out to me too was Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner had a hell of a run there. Like, just
that's a good pick.
Run. Right from Spinal Tap right up. And I wanted to give a shout out to Burt Reynolds too. Between 78 and 82, he had one hell of a streak, and it wasn't until 1983 when he turned down the Jack Nicholson role in Terms of Endearment.
Oh, Terms of Endearment.
Because he wanted to go in and he wanted to start in Stroker Ace. But that's when his streak came to an end. But he was a big box office star for a while there. But anyway, so those are some of my... and another one, too, that stands out to me, too, was Dustin Hoffman. If you look at, in the 70s, he was in Papillon and Lenny and All the President's Men and Marathon Man and Kramer versus Kramer and Tootsie. He was just incredible. And, of course, Ishtar. One of my favorites. You might say that the streak ended at Ishtar. I would say he kept it going strong because I love that movie so much. But I don't know. I just overall, really, really good picks all around. I thought we did a good job. So what do you say now we have some
Fun with Caveman.
All right, we're talking about winning streaks, obviously, this week. So what I'm going to do for you this week, Derek, I'm going to ask you some trivia questions about winning streaks in Hollywood. Okay. And I'm going to vary this up a little bit. So there's a little bit of different stuff going on, but lots of different winning streaks. Okay. And records and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So this actor holds the record for the most consecutive $100 million grossing films. Can you name the actor?
Tom Hanks.
No, I'm sorry. It was Will Smith.
Oh, he was my backup pick.
Yeah, Will Smith from 2002 until 2008. Men in Black 2, Bad Boys 2, I, Robot, Shark Tale, Hitch, The Pursuit of Happiness, I Am Legend, and Hancock all made $100 million or more at the box office. Just incredible. All right, so maybe this one should be easy. I don't know for you. So if you consider worldwide box office receipts, Derek, what director has grossed more money than any other in movie history?
Oh, it's got to be Spielberg.
Yeah, it's not only that, $10 billion worldwide.
Oh, yeah. And I'll bet if you look at whoever the number 2, 3, and 4 people are on that list, if you add those numbers together, it's probably still not as close as Spielberg's.
Number 2 is almost half. It's $6 billion. Is the Russo brothers that did Avengers?
Okay, that's fair.
So, and then Peter Jackson's on the list and other guys. Okay, all right. So here's more of a newer one for you. You're gonna like this. This actor was nominated for 3 straight Academy Awards for his performances in films between 2012 and 2014. Can you name him? Wow.
Okay, give me a second to think about this. 2012 to 2004. Daniel Day-Lewis.
No, I'm sorry. It's Bradley Cooper.
Oh, Bradley Cooper.
Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle in 2013, and American Sniper.
He didn't make my list. I thought, I'm going to put Bradley Cooper on the list, but no, he had a few stinkers along the way.
All right, I got one for you. This actor has appeared in films that have collectively grossed more money than any other actor in history. Can you name
Harrison
that?
Ford. Harrison Ford.
No, I'm sorry. It's Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, yeah, geez.
Because remember,
sheer volume of work.
Well, not only that, he appears
he's been in all the Avengers
every
movies.
Avenger movie at the end credits. So they all count, right? Yeah. All right, here I'm going to give you like betting, and you like the range in betting, like the over under and all that.
You an over and under?
So I'm going to go within 2. I'm going to give you a little bit of range. So within 2, how many Oscars has composer John Williams been nominated for?
Nominated 51.
It's 50. Very good.
I knew it was around 50. I'm like, well, if I got a margin of 2.
I thought margin of 2. I thought you're going to be done. You're going to pick 15 or something like that. Okay. Now, 3 films share the record for the most Oscar wins in a single year with 11 Oscars each. Can you name all 3 films?
No, but I'm sure I can name 2 of them.
Go for it.
Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
That's one of them. 111. Yep.
Titanic.
That's the second one. The third one was a few years before.
I think it's an oldie goldie. I'm gonna guess. Okay. Let me talk this one through.
Sure.
My guesses are going to be either Cleopatra, Wizard of Oz, or Gone with the Wind. I'm gonna go with Gone with the Wind.
No, I'm sorry. It's Ben-Hur.
No.
Cleopatra. I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
I thought Cleopatra was nominated for a bunch of awards.
No, it sucked. The largest sweep in Oscar history occurred when this film was nominated for 11 Academy Awards and it won all 11. So building on the last question, which one of those movies was nominated for 11 and won all 11?
It was the Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Absolutely. All right. 2 male actors are tied for the most consecutive years with nominations for an acting Oscar, with 4 straight years nominated for an actor Oscar. Can you name either one of them?
Okay. Does it?
We mentioned Bradley Cooper had 3, but these two have 4.
And I know it's not Tom Hanks because he didn't have them in a row. Was Jack Nicholson one of them?
No, I'm sorry. Marlon Brando and Al Pacino.
Oh, Pacino. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Brando from 51 to 54 and Pacino from 72 to 75. Okay. It was 2 actresses, though, Derek, that actually share the record for the most consecutive acting Oscar nominations with 5. Any chance you can name either one of them? This is even harder.
I mean, by the numbers, I would go Meryl Streep, but if it's going to be even harder, I'll stick with Meryl Streep.
Actually, it was Bette Davis and Greer Garson.
Sure.
Really?
At least I've heard of Bette Davis.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to, and maybe this one is easy. I don't know if this one's easy or hard, but I'm going to kind of end with a fun one. What Saturday Night Live alumnus has grossed more money at the box office than any other?
It's got to be Mike Myers. Oh, it's got to be Eddie Murphy. Oh, okay. Hold on. Third time's a charm. Let me think about this.
Hard.
Well, those just seem like the obvious choices. Okay, hold on. I mean, Will Ferrell's been in a lot of stuff, but I don't think it's not.
Ain't Will Ferrell.
Okay, hang on. Let me think back. Who was in the original cast?
It's so hard, isn't it?
I don't know.
Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, again, because of the Marvel stuff. Damn it.
Yep. You forget that he appeared in the cast of SNL during 85-86 season.
Yeah.
God, that season. Oh, remember Joan Cusack and Anthony Michael Hall were in it? Oh, God, it was terrible. Oh, terrible. But yeah, he's the Saturday Night Live alumnus that has grossed the most. So, all right. So it was tough. I tried to get you on some tough ones because, I mean, you really know this stuff. But next week, Derek, we're going to come back with a movie. So it's going to be your turn to nominate something. So what do you got? What are you thinking?
All right. So since we did winning streaks this week, that seems very sports, right? Like you hear winning streak, you think sports. And we already mentioned earlier tonight when I was talking about Sandra Bullock, I mentioned the movie The Blind Side based on the book by Michael Lewis. So I'm going to get you to watch another movie based on another book by author Michael Lewis. This one's called Moneyball.
Oh, I like baseball. I'm a baseball guy.
It stars Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill. And it is Brad Pitt was nominated for an Oscar. Like, it was a legit movie. And
it was nominated for Best Picture too, wasn't it?
I believe it was.
I think it was, yeah.
It was nominated up and down. Well, arguably, Brad Pitt got robbed for that one, but we'll talk about that next week.
Sure.
Have you ever seen it?
I actually have. I've seen. I take that back. I've seen parts of it.
Okay.
I don't think I've actually sat down and watched the whole thing. I've seen parts of it here and there, and yeah, and I love baseball, so this is gonna be great.
Well, and it's one of these ones where. Because I mean, you know, the premise, it's about the use of statistics and sabermetrics to try and change baseball. A lot of the stuff that they talk about, there are visual elements on the screen to support the dialogue. So this is not one of those movies where you want to be playing on your phone while you're watching it. Again, you're a baseball guy. I think you're going to get wrapped right up in the movie and want to watch it anyway. But I'll just tell you that if you're sort of on your phone for half the movie, you are going to miss some of the things that really help this movie go from being good to being great. I hope you enjoy it. Moneyball starring Brad Pitt. We'll come back next week. We'll talk about it. It's on cable all the time, so I'm sure you'll have no problem finding it on one of the on-demand services. But yeah, I'm looking forward. I've probably seen it a dozen times. I love it. It's been on cable just the last couple of weeks, and I always seem to jump in the middle, and so I'm looking forward to watching it from the very beginning again. So
nice. I'm sure the two of us can tackle this one, no problem. And like I say, I'm a big fantasy baseball guy, so this will be great for me. So I'm glad to do.
Well, maybe what we can do, no promises, but
Yep.
I think I have someone who may be a suitable guest star who can come in who also knows baseball and also knows this movie backwards and forwards. And I'll reach out and see if I can convince him to come on. And if he can, great. And if not, you're going to get stuck with just the two of us.
No, that's fine. I'm always open to have guests come on and talk about anything pop culture related with us, especially movies. So let's do that. But I tell you what, Derek, you reach out to this person, this mystery person, and if you're able to get them to come and join us, that'd be great. And if not, they'll have to come back with the two of us. But until then, regardless of who's going to show up or not, this is Chris McBrien For Derek Myers saying, thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.